So for homework that was due today, Thursday, September 24th, I asked you to answer two questions, two word problems. The problems could have been found on the website, and they were both having to do with the absolute value. Now, several of you mentioned on your note card that you struggle with word problems, and that is absolutely normal. Word problems are tricky, especially because they require of us to use the math that we're learning in class and apply them into new situations. So that is why I'd like to go over the problems with you before the next test. So problem number 1 talks about hypo and hyperthermia. And they say that both conditions are potentially dangerous and occur when a person's body temperature fluctuates by more than 8 degrees. So remember when we talked about distances in class, and we said that the absolute value was a great way to demonstrate the distance between 2 points on a number line, and when we use it with an inequality, we're really talking about a range. So here we're saying, well, we don't know what possible x can satisfy this inequality, but we want that distance between b and x to be within a certain c, right? So we can go down c units, go down c units or up c units, but that x has to fall within this range, okay? So in the problem that we're given, we're told that the temperature that we could have, we don't know which temperature that is, we're trying to find out what an appropriate range would be of temperatures. Well, and our body's normal temperature of 98.6 degrees, well, it has to be under that 8 degrees. That distance between, or the difference between our body's temperature, the normal, and say we have a temperature of 100 degrees. Well, is that difference less than or equal to that 8 degrees? Because if we're over 8 degrees, then that's, potentially really harmful. So let's solve that. We've got our nice absolute value here, no extra terms, so we can go ahead and solve. Let's write our two equations. The positive, remember we don't do anything to the inequality sign or to what's to the right of it, and we've got the negative. So what does that mean? Well, let's solve. Let's add 98.6 degrees. Oops, that's an 8. Pardon me. So we're adding, this goes away, and we're left with 106.6. Now we've got to distribute that negative to everything in the parentheses. Less than or equal to 8. Let's subtract 98.6 from both sides of the equality symbol, and we're left with negative x is less than or equal to, well, that's negative 90.6. Now let's multiply by a negative 1 to both sides to get rid of this negative. But what happens when you multiply or divide by a negative? Well, you've got to flip the sign. So that becomes 90.6. So when we graph that on a number line, we see that let's put 90.6 down here and 106.6 here, right? And our body temperature is 98.6. Well, is that 8 degrees? Is that our tolerance level? Yeah, it is. This is 8 degrees more than 98.6, and this is 8 degrees less. Well, we could have a temperature of, 100, and it's within that range. Or we could have a temperature of 96, and it's within that range. So all of the acceptable temperatures are between 90.6 or 106.6, or else you may have hyper or hypothermia. So those are our two solutions to the problem. And we can write them as a compound, or as a compound inequality. So 90.6 is less than or equal to x, which has to be less than or equal to 106.6. There we are. Okay, now the second problem, we're talking about gears produced at a factory. And we're told that the ideal gear will be 6 inches in length with a tolerance of 0.1 inches. So that means, if we're drawing our number line, that the ideal the ideal gear is 6 inches long, but we really could go all the way to, plus 0.1 or minus 0.1, this way, so 6.1, or what is 6? So 59.9. So really we could go, what am I saying? 5.9. So really that's the range, or else they're getting thrown out. We don't want them. They're no good to us. So can we write an inequality that that demonstrates the situation? Well, let's call the length of the wheels that we find accessible L, and let's write that we want that distance between L, like this could be L, anything within that tolerance, right? L minus 6, well, we want that to be less than or equal to 0.1. That's our tolerance level. We're saying if it's more than, it's getting thrown out. So do we have an answer choice that models, or that we have? Remember, absolute value of L minus 6, that's what we had on our paper. Well, that's answer choice A. And it can't be B, because if L was the distance between L and 6 was greater than 0.1, well, it would get thrown out. So let's think about that as a difference or a distance. And this is some sort of a tolerance or an acceptable range. Okay, I hope that helped.